Hi guys, good afternoon. We'll just wait for a few more people to join us. See, we have a whole bunch of new faces actually that have attended, which is good to see for our first webinar of 2022. I think we'll just wait a couple more minutes. All right, I think we can kick it off. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us for our first webinar for this year, 2022, and we're kick-starting it with marketing. So it's typically a topic that a lot of our MSP partners sort of sweep under the rug, but not this year. New marketing. This is now the time to focus on it. I am joined with Sim from Pounce Marketing. We'll be kicking it off. But before we do, just some housekeeping. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A rather than the chat so they don't get lost. Also, if you've attended our other series in this webinar marketing series, you'll get more chances to win a 1-hour marketing workshop with Pounce and Sim's team. So thanks again for joining us. So with that, I will kick it off with Sim.
Thanks so much, Meryl. Well, thank you guys firstly for taking the time out of your day to join us on this marketing session. As Meryl mentioned, this is New Year, New Marketing. We're also a week away from Valentine's Day. So I have made it my mission today to make you all fall in love with marketing rather than dread the whole idea or the concept of what marketing is. So I really have 30 minutes to convince you guys that marketing is really going to be an asset for your business. And I really hope that in this session, you guys get some really awesome takeaways and you can at least start to implement some things in your business. But before we get started, just to gauge the room a little bit, I've just got a few quick polls just so I can kind of help frame the conversation of this webinar a few different ways. So Jessie, if I can just get you to kick off the first poll, that would be amazing. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes just to quickly go through the polls and then we'll get rocking and rolling.
Also, if I can see that there's is it just the first poll that is showing?
We've got both the polls up.
Both polls.
So
okay.
A bit of a double whammy.
So with the second poll as well, if you are focusing on other activities, marketing activities for this year, you can just note that down as well in the chat, and then that way we can discuss that too.
I always like a good poll just to kick us off. It's one of those things that you're like, oh, do I have to do it? But at least it gives you a good guide in terms of where you guys are at, because we do have a bit of a jam-packed session for you guys today.
I think that should be good.
Alrighty. Perfect. Jessie, do we have the results of the poll that we can? Oh, perfect. I've got to look at the poll results right here. So we've got about 20% of the crowd saying they have developed a marketing strategy for 2022. That's awesome. We've got 50% of the room kind of not sure where to start. So hopefully I can shed some light for you. looking in terms of where we're all focusing our efforts on. Okay, great to see. We've got 80% of the room focusing on website, 70% focusing on content, about 60% focusing on social, and some people looking at EDMs as well. So I think all across the board, this is a great start, team. And I am going to kind of go through the presentation and kind of shed some light on some of these key topics. So without further ado, you guys must be wondering who I am and why I'm here today. So I'm the CEO and founder of Pounce Marketing. We're a specialist B2B IT marketing agency. So my background, I have been in the IT industry for over, oh gosh, showing my age now, about 15 years. So I've always kind of worked vendor side, and literally just a few days ago, we turned 5.
Yay. Congrats.
It's one of those awesome milestones to kind of, survive COVID, and here we are today. So that kind of is one of the reasons why we're collaborating with Hosted Networks, because we really want to help educate and bring some light in terms of, how MSPs can really help amplify their marketing, especially in 2022. Before we really deep dive into everything, I think the core essence of what we really need to look at is developing a marketing strategy. As the year goes on, it's kind of hard because some people are like, yeah, we need to develop a 12-month plan. But personally, for me, I feel that if we can even just lock in a 6-month plan, that's really going to help you. And the reason why I say 6 months is because the environment we're operating in at the moment is continuously changing and evolving. You don't really know what's going to happen. I hate to say the C word, but there might be another COVID outbreak, and that's going to throw a spanner in the works. So I think even if we can tentatively pencil in a 6-month plan, I think, and keep that fluid, that's really going to help us. So what is a marketing strategy? It really is your business's overall game plan for reaching prospective customers and turning customers into your loyal base for any of your products and services. The reason why it's documented is because, number one, we're all time poor, and we always kind of start with these big commitments at the start of the new year. It's like, my New Year's resolution is I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go to the gym. And we start off strong in the year, but then it tapers off, right? Well, for me personally, I always start that as my goal. And this year I'm like, no, I'm not going to make any goals. But having a proper marketing strategy and having it documented keeps you accountable, right? It's something that you can always refer back to and be like, yes, these are the areas that I want to focus on. This is what I want to achieve for the year. And it keeps you on point. The next thing is it also helps you reach your target audience. So if you guys were here for the very first webinar session we did, we really focused on helping develop your buyer personas. So I would really take that into consideration as well when formulating your marketing plan. The marketing plan also helps you spend your money in all the right places. It also then aligns your spend, your effort, as well as the different tactics that you're going to employ. And ultimately, having a marketing strategy will help you get measurable outcomes on what you're investing money in. So I would say that as long as you document it and you have a plan, keep it fluid, you can always change things up as time goes on. So with that, I would like to introduce you to 8 core candidates in your marketing mix. Each one has different pros and cons, and I'm going to shed some light on each one of them. So introducing candidate number 1. So candidate number 1 is all about looking, feeling sexy. It's all about branding. Every MSP that I speak to always kind of says, yes, we've got a brand tick. We don't need to focus on branding. But I really just want to kind of shed some light on this, that branding is not just, hey, I've got a logo, that's it, I'm done. Branding covers so many different elements. It covers, not your logo, the font that you're using, the colors for your brand, how that gets rolled across all your digital inventory, how that gets rolled across all your print collateral, your brand stationery. And as your business grows, it's important to kind of come back to your brand and really just think, does my brand need to evolve as my business is evolving? As you can see on the example here, Microsoft over time have evolved their brand to be the Microsoft that you now love and know as a recognizable brand. So I think with a lot of MSPs, I'm not suggesting that you change your brand every single month, but I'm saying that maybe every single year, kind of just reflect back on your brand, the look and feel. Is your positioning right? Is your messaging right for your brand? And how can you kind of do minor little updates that would still kind of reflect where you want to go as a business?
I think just on this, so you've touched on branding as more of a visual communications, but branding is also related to the messaging and tone of your organization. So some of our partners, our partner MSPs, they work very close to the SMB local community, and so their messaging is really friendly and professional. They're not their messaging isn't sort of corporate, because it doesn't align with the brand and the people they're trying to target as well. So that's something to consider too.
Yeah, that's a great point, Meryl. Thank you. Candidate number 2 is all about content. So content comes in lots of different shapes and formats. Content can either be ebooks, it can be white papers, it can be case studies, it can be infographics, it can be video content. But the way to think about content is really to get an understanding first and foremost from what your team actually need, particularly your sales team, right? They're the ones that are going out and talking to customers. They're the ones that are understanding what the pain points and challenges are in the market space. So they might be able to shed some light. So they might turn around and say, hey, we just spoke to this customer. We may not have won it. We probably need more case studies or some more material that we can send out to them just to help them along the buyer's journey. Content can also be created in multiple shapes and forms. Sometimes, for example, if you create like a white paper or an ebook, that can be also broken down into smaller pieces of content that you can then share again on social. So I think the biggest thing I'd like people to kind of take away from content is you don't just create it once and be like, okay, I'm just ticking a box and that's done. I've done my content piece, but it's also how you can really distribute it, how you can provide new life to that piece of content. So even if you wrote a blog, say 5 years ago, you can still refresh that content to make it more relevant as something new. So you're not necessarily starting from scratch. You've got a benchmark or a baseline to even consider. Sorry,
Yes,
Meryl, did you have a question there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that. So you mentioned speaking with your sales team on what the end users are, asking for and things like that. But I think it's equally important to have a conversation with your technicians of what are the frequently asked questions, what are the pain points that the end customers are experiencing, because that can be a document in itself, a quick FAQ. It might be product related or it might be troubleshooting related. And that FAQ in itself, as you mentioned, can be broken out. It might be a social media post. It might be an infographic that you could create or something like that. So speaking to not only your sales team, but your technicians, because they're the ones that actually have the feet on the ground and speaking to your customers in your target audience.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Candidate number 3 is all about the website. So I know a lot of us start off either developing the website ourselves, because really our focus is to get out into market and really start getting customers and getting new wins on the board. As your business grows and as your business evolves, it's really important to also make sure that your website is consistent with who you are as a brand. And this also ties back into the branding component. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination, go out and just revamp your entire website, but there's always elements that you can tweak along the way. For example, if you look at your homepage, you might have a rotating banner on your very first screen that people see. Content there can be updated on a regular basis just to keep it fresh, and I think everyone is time poor. So just looking at elements that kind of, on your services page, does that reflect your current services that you're offering? Maybe your vendor page, you might have new vendors that, you're adding to your mix, or some vendors you're not really selling. So maybe just keeping that fresh, keeping it updated from time to time, and making sure the messaging also aligns back to your brand is really, really important. The other thing to consider with your website is also how people interact with it on a mobile device. More and more users are now looking at things on the phone. So it's also important to keep in mind and have that balance between, just having information overload, but also understanding how the user is going to digest that content when they're scrolling on it on your mobile device. Candidate number 4 is all about SEO. So SEO, this is definitely something you're going to have to be in it for the long haul to be able to start to see some traction. And with SEO, there's 3 main components. There's on-page SEO. So this is any factors that relate to what exists on your current website. This looks at the content, it looks at metadata, it looks at your images, your alt tags, your links. So I know a lot of times people are like, yep, for my SEO strategy, I'm writing blogs every month. But it really is also looking at, are you adding the right keywords? Are people actually searching for the terms that you want to be ranking for? The next one on the list is off-page SEO. So these are any activities that impact your SEO, but don't really occur on your website. So a great example is, any backlinks. So sometimes you might be mentioned in ARN or you might be mentioned in CRN for something. You might just have appointed a new vendor, or you might have noticed a new data breach. But off-page SEO really is thinking about how you can get those backlink traffic back to your website. Off-page SEO also includes your Google My Business and how your Google My Business is set up. So keeping that up to date, updating, seasonal times, for example, during Christmas, your office might close. So keeping those times relevant, those all have an impact on your off-page SEO. Technical SEO, on the other hand, is something that you probably need one of your developers to help you. So this really refers to your website's core functionality and how Google crawls your website. So this really focuses on your URL structures, your XML sitemaps, and the mobile responsiveness of your website. So again, it's just something that you need to consider and just at least consider a minimum of a 6-month to a 12-month strategy for you to start to be able to see the results. The next candidate that we have is PPC. So PPC refers to pay-per-click advertising. So this can relate back to Google ads. This can relate to LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads. It really depends. But if this is an element that you want to add to your mix, it's really important to define what your strategy is and really work on what the objective of the campaign is. Do you want to generate leads? Do you want to just do the campaign for brand awareness? It's also important to understand that whatever ads you do, there will be a call to action. So that call to action will probably take you to a landing page, and we need to make sure that that landing page is PPC compliant. I know, like Meryl, we had this conversation about what is a PPC compliant landing page. So there's lots of different criteria for what is considered a PPC compliant landing page, and I can share that later. But ultimately, it's how Google also ranks and starts positioning your landing page with the ad content that you're serving to your audiences. So this can include something simple of making sure you have like your form fill located on the top of your landing page rather than all the way at the bottom. With PPC landing pages, it's also one thing that I have to mention is that I know some people love to capture every possible bits of details from the prospect, right? The more form fields you have, the less likely people are actually going to fill up your form. And then you're going to be wondering why your campaign's not performing. So again, it's a bit of a balancing act between capturing data and having too many forms that people just kind of drop off before even submitting their data. The next one, events. This is something that I know, even for me, last year was challenging because it was either face-to-face events, it was then a hybrid event, it was then a virtual event. I'm sure so many of you would have gotten invites to, an executive roundtable, a whiskey tasting, cocktail tasting. Oh my God, the list goes on and on. But I will say that events are still an integral part of your strategy. You just need to determine what is the best fit for you. At the moment, in the current space that we're seeing, the industry kind of feels okay. I think the confidence is slowly coming back to have face-to-face events. But again, it's also being smart and considered in terms of how you're rolling out that event strategy. You know, like I think as long as you kind of keep it more on the smaller side of things, but you know, I'd say 10 to 15, you'll probably be able to get away with that. But I think, you know, if we're looking at about 100, 200, I know everyone has differing views, but me personally, I'd probably be like, I don't think the market is just ready for that. So it's again something to consider. Events, in my perspective, also kind of tie into webinars, right? I know everyone says webinars, everyone's fatigued, but I have to say, as long as you have compelling content and you've got some compelling speakers, webinars are still a good way to engage your audience. The other thing to consider is that, you know, there's lots of different vendors out there. They tend to participate in some of the larger trade shows and conferences. So it might even be worthwhile, you know, having a conversation to see if there's like a joint event that you can possibly co-sponsor together, which would then also help reduce the cost, but also then reduce some of like the heavy lifting that you have to do, because you can rely on them to support you with that. So
yeah, I definitely agree on leveraging your vendors. And it's not only the fact that they can help you with things like marketing development funds, but typically these guys are large enough that they will have their own marketing teams that you can just basically bring the ideas to them and they can help flesh you out and execute. So as Sim says, very, you know, low touch from your side of things.
yeah.
But I will say as well with events, from what I've seen with partners, is just it doesn't hurt to ask your customers on what type of events that they would actually attend. Is it a lunch and learn? Whether that's, you know, face-to-face or a virtual, and then that way you can gauge instead of trying to guess and then, you know, put on an event and no one attends because you didn't ask the question. So ask the question.
100%. The next one is looking at social. So social, this is like literally the bee's knees, right? Everyone is on social at the moment. You've got Facebook, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Twitter, you've got TikTok, you've got Snapchat. The list goes on. But I always keep coming back to the fact and asking yourself the question, what channel can I create great content for? Social is really like, there's so much noise out there and you really have to stand out. You have to have a clear, defined voice to be able to get traction, you know. And social, again, pick one channel is my recommendation and do it well. Like there's no point being something to everybody, you know. Like what users want these days is really looking at, hey, I follow this brand because I get consistent content. What generally tends to happen is that, you know, we look at, okay, now I've got some free time, I'm gonna like start putting posts out every single day. And then we like get busy, as life generally tends to get busy. And then we're like, okay, now I just don't have time. And then for like 2 or 3 months, your social media account is dormant. And then you start picking up again. So making sure you have that consistency is what is going to help you build your engagement and build your followers as well on the channel that you choose. A great way to even think about social is that it can be done in advance. So as long as you have a proper strategy in place, you can use some free scheduling tools like this Hootsuite, there's Sprout Social. There's a few out there that don't really cost anything to you. You can just choose them, get your content written and scheduled, and it automatically posts it on the date and time that you've selected. Another option is, you know, if you personally don't have time, you can look at even helping you get a VA to kind of, you know, create some content, you review it, and then get it scheduled. And then the other thing to think about social is also the type of content. You know, are you just going to be putting like, you know, a 64-page ebook as kind of some content that you're sharing? Is that going to work? Or is video content going to be better? So again, it's really thinking of what's going to drive engagement and what's going to make you stand out on the channel that you choose.
Yeah, what I would say with low hanging fruit when it comes to social is reshare content that already exists. I have one of my partners that does it really well. He'll send out an email related to, let's just say, a security breach, just to keep, their customers across what's happening in the industry and just to what to be wary of. And then he'll link back to a particular article that if they want to do some light reading, then they're able to do that. So it's just building that authority as well, that this is happening in the industry and, something to be aware of, but they're not necessarily creating the content themselves. So yeah, that might be something that you look into when sharing on social.
Yeah. The next one is tying back to our second webinar that we've done with you guys, which is all about email marketing best practices. In this day and age, I still believe in the power of email communications, as long as you're not spamming your database. It's not about sending an email out every single week, but it's also really understanding what content does my audience want to read? What would they engage in? If you're thinking of creating a newsletter, do you want to create that as a quarterly newsletter because it'll be easier for you to get content? Don't commit to doing something monthly and then you just stop halfway. Again, with anything that you do from a marketing perspective, consistency has to be key. And if you are doing email marketing, my recommendation is to use an email automation platform. The most common one out there is MailChimp. I know MailChimp at the moment are raising their prices, so they are a little bit more expensive, but there's heaps of different providers out there. So if you want to get a bit more insights into email marketing, I'd suggest that, we go back and you can rewatch the webinar that we did on email marketing, or shoot me and Meryl an email. I'm more than happy to address any questions you have. But email marketing does work. Just make sure you're not spamming your database. So now that we've met all the 8 candidates, it's really time to make sure that we start to evaluate which one is right for you and your business. Part of that also then looks at the ROI. So anything that you do, we need to be able to track some measurable outcomes. You want to be able to report back to the business. You want to be able to see some traction. So for any tactic you do, there's lots of different metrics or ROI considerations. For example, if I'm looking at an email newsletter, I'm looking at the open rates. I'm looking at unsubscribe rates. Unsubscribe rates are probably a good thing to look at, because if you've got your database and say you've got like 50 to 50% unsubscribe rates, either there's an issue with where you've got the data from, or the content that you're sending is considered spam. So it gives you some insights in terms of how your database is kind of reacting to the content that you're putting out there.
Just while we're on email newsletter, we did have a question around EDM. So what are the compliance rules when sending an EDM?
So the biggest thing is that your data, like your contact base, needs to have opted in to receive communications from you. So that could either be, for example, if they've come from your website and you've got, simple example, on your website, on your contact us page, you can have a little opt-in box at the bottom that if they are submitting their data, it could be a little checkbox to be like, by ticking this, you agree to receiving marketing communications from hosted networks. The other thing to think of as well is if you have a campaign landing page, again, having that opt-in, or even if at the bottom of your website in your footer, you've got a newsletter subscribe link, that's another way. So the biggest thing, or the biggest red flag I've seen, is that people kind of purchase a list or like a database, and that database is not GDPR compliant. Those people have never opted into receiving any email communications from you. So you can actually be charged with hefty fines if they report you as spam. So something very important to consider. When we're looking at SEO, I look at elements like my keyword ranking, where I'm tracking today, where I'm going month on month. I look at my backlink position. From a lead generation perspective, I look at my conversion rates on the different tactics that I'm choosing. I look at my cost per click. Back to PPC advertising, LinkedIn is probably one of the most expensive channels to advertise on. So I would be looking at, if what my CPC is roughly like $400, $800, is that the best channel that I should be kind of advertising on, or is there other things that I can consider? With social, again, it looks at how many followers you start having on your page. But for me personally, I like to look at engagement. I may not have the biggest follower base, but as long as people are interacting with the post, people are commenting, people are sharing, I use that as a good measure of success. And finally, with your website, you want to probably look at organic traffic, how much time people spend on your page. If people are just landing on your website and then just the bounce rate's really high, that kind of gives you good indicators and good steers in terms of areas that you can optimize. Which brings me to my final point. In any activity that you guys are doing, it is really important to do a review in terms of how it's performing, how it's progressing. I understand that everyone doesn't have a lot of time. You may be the only person doing marketing, so you may not have the time to do monthly reviews. So I'd say at the very minimum, do a deep quarterly review on all the different tactics. It's also important to note that if activities are not producing the results, don't just pull the plug on it straight away. It's important to really take the time to understand the why. Why is this not working? If my PPC campaign is my Google ads are not generating the results I want, then maybe I'd look at, there might be an issue with my landing page. Or if, for example, I've done all this great social media posts, but no one's interacting, again, it's more a matter of, well, why is that the case? Is the content not the right content? Is my follower base too small? If you've got 50 followers on LinkedIn on your company page and no one's really interacting or no one's really responding, it might be another factor to be like, do I have the right followers on my account? So there's different things. So I think with marketing, you get a lot of insight in terms of the activities that you're doing. And if certain activities are performing well, do more of it. If you feel that video content is working for you great on social, you do like your top tips or top cybersecurity tips and you're getting great results, do more of it. Sometimes I also think that, when I mention video, everyone's like, yeah, I need to have great quality video. I need to spend $10,000s to get the best quality of video, but it's not necessarily the case. In this environment with everyone working from home, if you've got a good camera, you've got a good setup at home, you can do your own video content at home. Just make sure the content is right. I'm just mindful that we're already at 1:33. So I might just quickly jump into my final key takeaways. I know I've kind of blown through this session, and I know you guys there's a lot of information to digest, but if I can leave you with 3 key things to take away from today is, whatever activities you're doing, we need to make sure that your marketing goals align with your business goals. If your business goals is all about hitting $100,000 in revenue per month, marketing needs to be able to support that from a lead generation perspective. If you're a new MSP and you've just established yourself, one of your business goals might be to increase brand awareness. So then you look at different tactics or different marketing activities to help with that awareness piece. The second thing is to make sure you define your focus. And by this, I mean, is really getting an understanding of your buyer personas, understanding your job titles, understanding the companies you want to target. Sometimes some people want to do an industry focus, so depending on what you want to focus on as a business, you need to prioritize those activities to align back to that. And finally, I can't stress enough that anytime you do any form of marketing activity, it's important to track it, measure it, and then optimize your campaigns. Small tweaks along the way will result in great outcomes. And with that, Meryl, I'm going to hand it back to you in case we have any further questions.
Yeah, I would love to open it up to any Q&As for those that are still on the line with us. I know we're over the 30 minutes. I've also spoken with Sim, and if anyone has some more detailed like questions or advice that they wanted to get on their marketing and their marketing strategy, Sim has also kindly offered to help answer any questions. So if you wanted to reach out to myself directly or Sim directly for those for that guidance, we're happy to do that. Along with this session today, which is our third in the webinar series, we have another 3 left. The next one is March 22nd on amplifying your LinkedIn presence. So we'll deep dive into that topic. So just seeing if there's any questions. Which doesn't look like there is. Let me see.
I'm sure someone's got a burning question out there. So no question's a hard question for me, guys.
So I do have a question. You've talked on purchasing lists, and I had a contact ask, is it a good idea to purchase a list to build up my database of contacts?
No.
Okay.
There's so many rodeos out there that are willing to sell you data. The majority of them tell you that they're all opt-in contacts when that's not necessarily the case. So I would strongly advise against that. I think, there's lots of different ways you can kind of start connecting with people as well. As an MSP, it's not necessarily about getting huge volumes, but as a starting point, connect with those contacts that you want on LinkedIn, do the introduction, just reach out, just say hello. So then at least, even though you may not directly have their email address to market to them straight away, but you're building that over time, and you're also building that level of credibility with them.
I would say as well, when buying a contact list is a lot of the time you will still need to vet the data. A lot of that is dead data. It's not up to date. There's people that have left the organization, that sort of stuff. So just be very mindful of that. And you have an existing database. If you're looking to grow, start up a referral program, see if you can build your contact base that way. We've got a question around CEO or SEO. Apologies. Oh, I need my third coffee. What is a reasonable dollar amount to spend on SEO?
Well, SEO, it depends if you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with an agency. Again, with SEO, there's lots of cowboy agencies out there, which may not cost a lot of money, but they may not be following SEO best practices, So my only advice is find an agency and kind of go and approach them to be like, these are what your objectives are, and then come back to you with a price. On average, at the very minimum, most agencies would probably be charging about $2,500 a month for SEO, and that should cover an element of on-page, off-page, and technical SEO. So $2,500 is normally my benchmark. I know there's lots of people out there that probably charge, there's offshore resources from India and stuff. They'll be like, I can guarantee you stuff for $850. But sometimes paying the money is better because it does less damage to your brand, because you're doing it the right way.
Awesome. Adam, yes, we will have the presentation available so you can have a read and also watch it.
You'll also get a copy of the checklist as well, which covers a lot of these components, for you to be able to have that conversation when you're planning your marketing mix.
Just have another question from Alex. What is a typical ratio to invest on marketing to revenue?
Well, we normally see that, as a startup, sometimes we feel that people generally tend to want to invest more because you need to have a level of awareness as well, that you need to factor in. So normally we'd probably say about 10% of marketing to revenue. is what we generally see. Some people like to be more aggressive, or some people might be a bit conservative. Again, it really just depends on you as your organization as well. If your team's probably 1 or 2 people, you may not necessarily want to invest huge dollars in marketing just yet. You might be focusing on other areas. So I think in terms of defining what your budget is, it's also your appetite in terms of how much you want to spend and how aggressive you want to be from a marketing perspective. The more things you add to your mix, the more money it's also going to cost you. And you might need to either outsource that to someone to help you, or you might just get someone in-house to help you, but you need to think of all those different factors as well.
Awesome. Just going back to SEO. I've been doing SEO for a year now, but I'm still not on page 1 of Google. Why isn't it working?
I get that question all the time. So I think this needs to formulate part of your overall SEO strategy. I think particularly in our space that we're working with, it's a very, very competitive industry and everyone is looking for roughly the same kind of keywords. So if you're not on page 1, number one, it may not be a realistic goal to be on page 1, but it's also looking at all the different activities that you're doing to get there. So it might just be, for example, you might need to have a mix of regular blog content that you put on a weekly basis so you can start ranking for those keywords. It might be looking at a backlink strategy where you're actually purchasing links to then help you rank for those keywords as well. So you can buy backlinks for your website as well. It is part of your LinkedIn strategy. So there's different elements you need to factor in for what that looks like. It also depends on your platform that you're using. For example, some of our clients, they started off using a Wix website. Wix is probably not the best website to help you rank and grow from an SEO perspective. So also thinking of the platforms that you're using, there's lots of different elements, but I'd say, you know what, if you're not ranking on page 1, do an SEO audit of your site, figure out where the gaps are, start plugging away at some of that. Or if you've already engaged an agency, maybe kind of go back to them as well to revisit what their strategy is and look at the different elements that they're helping you rank for. They might have, you might be on page 25 at the moment, but maybe over those 6 to 12 months, they might have now brought you to page 10. Not the best, but again, from page 20 to page 10, that's still progress. So these things take time, and it's just understanding all the different elements before saying or questioning the why.
Awesome. And before we wrap up, because I'm just looking back at the polls and it looks like website and content seem to be the most popular. So just put you on the spot there, Sim. What are your, I guess, top 2 or 3 tips on each of those to improve website and content?
Oh, great question. The first thing I'll say is so many people with their website have a contact us form, right? So like you click the contact us page,
Yes.
there's a form. It tends to kind of go into like this black hole because some people never sync that up with like, a CRM or your email platform. So you might actually be getting people filling up those leads, but if you don't link it somewhere, you've just kind of lost the traffic. So that's one key area that we've noticed not a lot of people do. So I'm going to put that one as my number 1. The second thing I'd probably say with your website is looking at it from a responsive nature. I think a lot of people tend to miss the mark in terms of how it appears on a mobile device. So probably consider that as well. From a content perspective, there's so many different types of content you can produce, but I'd say the biggest things that for this year, as part of like one of the definite trends that we're seeing, is also looking at video content. So short snackable videos that can go out to get the information across. So not like a 3-minute video, but like short bursts of information, whether that's 15-second videos, 30-second videos on something or some topic. I'd say consider that for your content strategy.
That could just be done, like it doesn't have to be a big video production on that. That could just be like a Zoom record. And
Correct.
given sort of what's been happening over the last year and a half, I think people are very forgiving if it is just a recording of yourself in the lounge room.
Correct.
But with good information, not just a recording of yourself.
Just
on
make
the
sure you
lounge.
have a little background. So like, you know, if there's any children or like kids screaming in the background, you can't really see that. But yeah, just be mindful.
Cool. Okay, I think we can wrap up there. Thanks so much, Sim, for your time. If you guys have any other questions, we'll be sending up this recording and presentation to you if you've attended, and look out for the next webinar, which is on amplifying your LinkedIn presence.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.